Hey everybody, welcome back to OHKO, a Pokemon VGC podcast, episode 63, and the most important episode. Yes, I'm your host, Joe Brown, joined by my co-host, Sierra Dawn, but we finally got him. Everybody's been asking. One of our best Pokemon friends out here in the commentary world, Mr. Len Deuel, joins OHKO here today. Len, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's going to be fun.
So this is Sierra. We're coming up to your neck of the woods. I know you don't live right there, but whatever. We're going to Canada this weekend, all three of us, as well as Jake and Gabby, for the VGC team for the Toronto Regional Championships. Last regional of the calendar year, last regional of Regulation H. How excited are you, Sierra?
I'm so excited. This is also going to be the first event that I've been on for the 2025 season. And I have been so bored. And I watch every event and I have been so bored. So I'm excited to see everyone again. I love going to Toronto. Toronto Regionals is always so much fun. The food, I mean, if you're one of those people that likes going to regionals and wants to hang out with your friends and eat good food, you're eating so good in Toronto. There's so much to do. There's going to be all the Christmas stuff. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I've never been. I'm excited. I got to get your Rex.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Len,
you'll have to come karaoke with us on Sunday.
I do love Toronto. Genuinely one of my favorite cities that we have on the circuit. So I'm very excited for this weekend. I think this is my fourth or fifth time going. I can't remember off the top of my head. A couple times with the grassroots days and a couple times with Pikachu paying for it. So it's fun in either experience. But we got a lot to talk about here with Len, who's been playing VGC for longer than some of our listeners have been born. Have been playing at the competitive level. Also commentator, as well as his top 16 run at LAIC this season. We got a lot to cover here, but I'm gonna start non-Pokemon. I'm gonna throw a little curveball, Sierra, because right before we were done, or right before we were about to record, I was finishing up one of my TFT games. I ended up getting third. I feel like it should have been a second. I'm not going to complain about it, whatever. But for those who don't know, one of the first times that Len and I actually started talking and became friends together was through TFT and through commentating a grassroots Pokemon TFT crossover event. Do you remember that event, Len? Do you remember?
Yeah, we had a bunch of top Pokemon players playing TFT. You and I were on the cast. It was fun.
Yeah, it was a fun time. So this is back during the COVID days. For anyone who wasn't following around, we had we had realized that a lot of Pokemon players through all of the games were also playing League of Legends, and then of course TFT came out, so everyone started playing TFT together, and everyone's at home during COVID and stuff. So we had an event where our Discord channel, we used to call it. Would you like when we play League, we call it Summoner's Rift, right? And TFT would call it Tift. So it's you want to do Rift or Tift is the TFT sound. So we held a Pokemon Rift or Tift event, and I think Wolf was there. The guy that just won LAIC, Thray, in the trading card game, he was also the player that won the Rift and Tift event all these years later. Pokemon still have a connections. Aaron Trailer died to Krugs. I will never forget. As long as I live, he was playing on mobile and died to Krugs. And it was
We've all been there, Aaron. We've all been there.
But basically, we'll start the question here with you, Len, because you not only are a top-level Pokemon player, but at the time, you were in Masters in TFT, and you were commentating TFT with me there, so you were analyzing the game at a high level. So how do you is it a trait that you have? Is it something you work on, or something that you're born with, that you're just innately strong in innately analytical games like this, like Pokemon and TFT?
Well, I love to play a bunch of strategy games. It's a shelf full of board games behind me, lots of different kinds of strategy games. But I think a lot of crossover between TFT and Pokemon, because they're uniquely similar in the competitive game sphere. I feel where you're building up your roster of characters and trying to figure out what combinations you can use, and then also dealing with kind of micro level plays. I can see why there's so many people who do both, and yeah, I really enjoyed playing it for a long time.
Now, Sierra, you've been grinding TFT recently.
Yes.
You were streaming a bunch. I was part of the Sierra Dawn crowd. I called us the Sierra Fiends. I came up with a better team name.
It was so much better than Sierra Dawn Squad.
Next set, we're the Sierra Fiends. Okay.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on, not to like have a huge deep dive into teamfight tactics on the Pokemon show, but like the differences like between TFT and Pokemon and some of the similarities that Len even talked about, like, do you see that crossover and why TFT is so popular within the Pokemon community?
So, first off, this will never fail to get me, but everyone talks about, like, oh, if you play, TFT, you play a lot of Pokemon, like, you'll be good at the other one, right? I'm so bad at TFT. So, like, what does that say about my Pokemon skills? Because I am struggling out here. Like, I hit flat, and then it's like, okay, cool. Like, that's about it. Like, I'm not doing so hot out here. So, yeah, I don't get it. Like, that was a weird way for me to find out that I'm also bad at Pokemon, because I don't know, but it's fun.
You can't predict people in TFT. You can't get in their heads, They're not showing off all your skills out there.
Well, also, like, if you pick one comp and everyone else wants to run the same comp, you're all done. Whereas Pokemon, you can pick the strongest comp and you're fine.
Yeah, everybody can use Flutter Mane. There's no rule. Like, you're not trying to find 3 Flutter Manes. Although, this will be the end of the TFT conversation. Not going to talk about leaks, not talking about anything in the world. Hypothetical conversation out there about a Pokemon auto chess, auto battler one day. Question is, do you want that to happen? And the second follow-up question is, how quickly would we drop VGC to play competitive Pokemon auto battling?
I don't know if I would drop VGC. I mean, we can do 2 things at once, but yeah, that would be pretty fun. I want to see that happen. If we look at like the Unite timeline, we may be waiting a while after TFT popularity. But I think it'd be a ton of fun. It seems like it fits the franchise pretty well.
Yeah, I'm like surprised that you're like, oh, we would drop VGC, because how many people play multiple of the different games? But yeah, it's like, oh my goodness, if they ever added an official like auto chess, I will never have a spare moment in my life ever again. I'm already queuing TFT. I walk around my house tidying up, and I have the iPad like in my arm, and I'm playing my turns while I'm tidying my house. Like, I'd be cooked. I'd be so cooked.
I'm just saying we might have to drop it because we might have to move to China. You know what I mean? I'm on the first ticket out. If they want early adopters, they want play testers, I'm on the first ticket out to test out a Pokemon TFT game. But speaking of TFT, we wish our friend Rosemary good luck over in the Macau championships, and hopefully she has fun. Hopefully everybody enjoys that. Not as much as you'll enjoy the Toronto Regional Championships this weekend. So let's get into that team. We'll start with you. Len. This is the last event of Regulation H. What are your thoughts? Obviously, you're a player who has had success in this regulation. I know I had Tub Nation guys on last week, and they kind of enjoy the format, and we've had other players like Joe Ugarte and others who enjoy Regulation H. So are you also in that camp? Are you sad we're going back to Miraidon and speed ties, or do you want to move on from where we are?
Oh, no, I mean, I love Regulation H. Like, over the history of Pokemon, the national decks-ish, but without restricted Pokemon formats, those are my favorite ones, whether it's like 2018 or 2012, and this is like pinnacle. I've loved this regulation so much. I've been trying to go to as many tournaments. I was still going to my locals every week, because I just want to play as much Regulation H as I can before it rotates out next month. But I'm really excited to see how it continues to evolve, because some formats we see get kind of stagnant, but this one feels like every week, every tournament, there's just new teams on top. So even as things are going to close out, there's going to be one person coming out as like the last champion in Regulation H, like the last team that people will remember being on top of the format. I think that'll be really fun to see.
Yeah, I think it's pretty. I think the point about how the format has not felt solved, and like it's every week, like, right, Dragonite came out of nowhere, and then Blood Moon Ursaluna won nothing for 2.5 months, and then it won back-to-back events, and then also won seniors of LAIC, and now it's like a huge threat. And then the Sneasler teams, you started running like bulky Sneasler with Psychic Seed or whatever, like, just like it just seems like the format never runs out of new like ideas. Maybe it's the same popular Pokemon, but like even Sinistra, right? Like that was a big event for Stuttgart as well. So like it just never runs out of fun ideas.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at Stuttgart and see like balanced Golden Go teams all over the top 8, and like imagine that could have been the entire format, but it really wasn't, right? We were just in different speed levels, different levels of offense versus defense the entire format. It's been really fun.
Now, Sierra, the Regulation G, this is a format that we're very well I guess, well versed in. We went through a whole 4 months of it. We're going to be back to another 4 months of it, whatever. How are we doing this weekend? How are we covering? Because we have 3/5 of the talent here. Let's have a conversation. How are we going to cover the Toronto conversation on like focusing and appreciating the now and being in Toronto and giving people their flowers for right now? But like, we know that there's like a big format January 1st, New Year's. Like, how should we have our conversations over the broadcast?
I don't think it's that deep. It's literally, all right, this is the like every event. It's like, okay, what's going to be the changes? Okay, there's an IC coming up. What's going to be hidden? Like all of that. Whereas this is the final event. So it's all coming down to this. What kind of is going to be that lasting impression of the format? What's going to be the standout? What have people been hiding till this last second? Like all of those little adjustments. Like, I don't think it needs to be a conversation of like, oh, this new regulation is right around the corner. Because first off, I don't think too many people like necessarily care in the same way. Like normally when you get a new regulation announced, everyone all of a sudden starts hitting the ladder and they're testing the new thing and they're bored with what they've got already. Whereas some people are kind of doing that because they just want to be ahead. But people are still very much focused in on this. So I don't think that we need to be like, I don't think we need to get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's just, it's simple. This is the last one. Let's go with the bang.
I think we know what's coming too, right? This is not like it's a whole new regulation. It's one that was played very deeply as like all the top players in the world prepared meticulously for the World Championships and for an AIC before that. And that tournament didn't have a ton of surprises for us, right? Like we all kind of went into it with this same ride-on construction having been strong for a long time. I don't think there's much reason to think it won't be strong again after winning Worlds and then going into January next month. So I'm for now focused on Reg H and enjoying that part.
Yeah, but to me, like, I don't know. I feel like I've been reading the tea leaves on Twitter and seeing the conversations and saying that like I have friends that are, trying to practice for Toronto and they're just running into the same 3 people on the ladder because everyone else is focused on Reg G. And I feel like even if people publicly, say negative things about Regulation G and, the speed ties and Maridon's busted and, whatever, I think like the numbers show that people are like very much practicing it. If they're going to San Antonio, very much trying to get back into it. And I think it's a format that I'm excited for because we didn't get a post-Worlds Reg G, right? Where usually the Worlds metagame, whatever comes out of it, is able to, back in my day, able to influence the format afterwards, right? We talk about like pre-Boston 2015 and then the post-chalk world of 2015 and like the Regulation D for Yokohama where it was the start of a brand new format and then that influenced the rest of that format and it went on and like we had some cool innovations, right? With like the Terabug iron treads and like some of the other silly things that were going on at Worlds, and then we didn't actually get to see that evolve any further. So I'm excited of like our Magmar and Electabuzz going to be even more popular because of how good they've been in Reg H. Is Sneasler going to be a threat because of Dire Claw and Unburdened procs makes you faster than Terra Fairy Maridon? Like I wonder if like the Reg G 2.0 is going to be different or have innovations from what we saw at Worlds.
I think a month ago I would have told you that you'd get like a week or 2 of everyone trying out their Reg H favorites and remembering why Urshifu and Iron Hands are better fighting types than Sneasler. I don't even think we're going to get that at this point. Everyone I've talked to about it feels like confidently moved back to the Pokemon before. I don't know how much will carry over from what we've learned from Reg H. I think you mentioned oftentimes what has success at Worlds is what carries over into a post-Worlds format. I didn't feel like there were a ton of surprises at Worlds this year. I think it really showed the level of preparation people had going into that tournament. That kind of so many of the secrets had been found and planned for ahead of time. That can lead to some like ripe opportunity for someone to kind of break the format with something totally new, and we could get some really interesting teams in Reg G that way. But like, I don't see any immediate changes. I expect a lot of players are kind of warming themselves back up to use what they were using in August. A few players I've talked to, that's exactly their plan. Just take the team. It worked okay at Worlds, got pretty good runs. Like, I'm ready to go back into it in San Antonio.
I think that's the smart thing too, because exactly what you said before, Len. Like, everyone practiced these teams for Worlds. These weren't like, oh, it was a random regional or whatever. Like, I didn't prep. Let's just throw 6 Pokemon in the builder and see what happens. Like, no, there was 2 months off where that's all people were talking about. That's all people were planning for. And it was, yeah, maybe we saw a couple of different things at Worlds, but at the same time, it felt like a relatively solid format, at least to an acceptable enough level that it's not going to be like totally crazy going back. So it'll be interesting. Like, I'm excited to go back. I don't know. I hate Sneasler. Come on, I know I'm not allowed to talk about hating Sneasler, but we're nearing the end of the format. I think I'm allowed to. You haven't been
here, Len. We're a very Sneasler neutral podcast now because of some prior conversations.
I'm not allowed to hate on Sneasler, but no, it's just one of those things that I'm very much okay with legendaries in the format. I'm kind of knowing what's coming. I don't like all the surprises, and I haven't really had the most fun with this format. I don't know if that's also because I haven't been incentivized to play because, again, it's my first event for Toronto. So it's kind of I've been a little bit more out of it for a good chunk of it. So I never got to really enjoy it like the past one. But I don't know. It'll be interesting. I'm curious with the format that seems relatively solved with where it can go from there. If people will... There's always going to be a new idea that hasn't necessarily been explored. I definitely don't think that idea is Sneasler going back. But we've gotten to see kind of this indie mail. We've gotten to see things like this Dragonite scale shot. We're seeing these micro adjustments kind of stacking up. And that could be fun to then maybe experiment a little bit with going back to the format.
Have you calced Electro Drift into these scale shot Dragonite EV spreads even with multi-scale?
I have not touched the format. Did my camera just die?
You are giving us a look right now. You are serving, right? You're back. You're back. Okay.
I had feelings about that. No, I have not looked at anything in the new format because Toronto's coming up. So I'm just, Electro Drift, I'll worry about that next week.
Yeah, you got a few more weeks you can just dream about Miraidon. He's not scary yet. He's not threatening us.
Miraidon is not scary if every single Pokemon on your team is Terra Ground. Then you can just play 50-50s the entire time.
But you can't dream about Miraidon because electric terrain means you can't get put to sleep, Len.
Oh no, I'm levitating. Levitating and sleeping.
Okay. You're Corviknight here. It's not a good time to be a Corviknight in front of a Miraidon. Did you play your traditional, Garchomp, T-Char, Corviknight squad in Reg G, or was Miraidon just too much of a burden for Corviknight?
No, I mean, I don't even think I ever put it in the team builder. I have in years past, thinking of restricted formats back in Sun and Moon and stuff. Garchomp struggles to be enough offense the way I play it in Reg H. Not enough offense to keep up in a restricted format. No, I spent that entire Reg G pretending that Calyrex was Garchomp. Because if you just kind of squint and look at it, it's slightly over the normal speed levels and can also run a sub-lefty spread set and use spread moves. So
when I hear I just pretended it was Garchomp. I just imagine if you close your eyes and it almost feel like nothing's changed at all. That's your next format. It's so sad, so tragic.
Len has to gaslight himself into good strategies to pretend that they're just Garchomp light, It's Instant Amoonguss is just it's like Garchomp if you change their types or whatever, He has to convince himself with a lie.
Mm-hmm. Golden Go instead of because it's basically Tyranitar, Corviknight, Garchomp. There's a Steel type, there's a Dark type. Yeah.
Oh,
the logic, there's logic in.
Let's talk about this history. Let's talk about the LENTAR, the Len Chomp. For those who don't know, Len Deuel has playing competitive VGC since before it was even called VGC. Honestly, for back into the Gen 4 days or whatever, before the official events are what they are now.
Before some people that are listening to this podcast were maybe even born.
I know. As I put it, I've
played Masters Division matches against people who were not born when I won my first regional, which is terrifying.
That's a gut punch. That's a gut punch for sure.
Oh my god, my back hurts just hearing that. Oh my god, we're old.
I jokingly said, Len's been playing this T-Char Garchomp combo since the Sinnoh administration, back in 2006 or whatever, but. For those who don't know, Len is a multi-time regional champion and has been playing Tyranitar and Garchomp for literally more than a decade and a half at this point. And I guess my, like, the obvious question, because we have these conversations in real life, but like, you know, for the audience who knows you as the TTAR guy, right, as the LENTAR guy, is what is that reason? What is that glue that no matter what the formats, and when Kangaskhan was great, and when Tapu Koko was great, and when Mega Salamence, and like all these crazy things throughout the history of VGC, what keeps bringing you back to this core that you love to build around?
Well, I think it's a two-part answer. The first part is like why I gravitated to it in the beginning, and then the second part is like why I've kept with it for so long. The first part is I think I just like a playstyle that is very passive damage trading. Often you can have almost deceptive damage trades where people don't realize, like, you know, you're doing a lot of damage, I'm doing a lot of damage, but it gives you spaces to make really important macro plays. Because we're trading damage, but I'm putting damage in places I really want it to be, and you're just putting damage into bulky Tyranitar that's eventually going to go down anyway, then maybe that's like hugely in my benefit. So even before Tyranitar, I was doing things like just clicking Blizzard with Kyogre and Abomasnow to try to open up space for Blissey. And so Tyranitar plays that role, just kind of throws out rock slides, throws out knockoffs, gets sand shipping down, and tries to open up space for something like Garchomp or Golden Go to close out a game. And lots of Pokemon actually played that role. I went to Worlds with Sublefty Heatran next to the Tyranitar, used the special Mega Salamence next to the T-Tar, but just the idea is always the same. Like, trade damage very passively and then try to close out the game. And then why I've stuck with it, especially this generation, so much of just like T-Tar, Garchomp, and Corviknight for like 2 years now, is because it is much easier to stay very like competent and prepared to stick with one core, right? I probably don't have as much time to put into prep for every tournament as a lot of the players who are consistently top cutting. And so a way that I can try to keep up with their level of prep is to carry over not just the prep from so far in this season or the prep from last season as I was getting ready for regionals, but the prep for tournaments 10 years ago where I was still like bringing in Tyranitar. And so especially in the team building phase, it helps to just have an anchor that I'm going to stick to, right? I have these 3 Pokemon. I probably tried 20, 25 different Pokemon in the other 3 slots, but I only had 3 slots that I had to deal with, and I was only trying to solve the problems that were created by the first 3 slots instead of kind of the entire open Pokedex and all of the different options. And I just hope that anchor is like keeping me like anchored together and not just like weighing me down to the bottom of the standings. But either way, you know, it works. And then if no one else is really playing it, or at least not playing it the way I am playing it, some people were actually playing T-Tar, Garchomp, and Corviknight this season, I just have more matchup experience than everyone else. Like if you're playing like a pretty standard comp, I've seen it. I've played against it on ladder a bunch of times. You may not have played exactly my 6 before, and so that's some advantage for me.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, when you're talking about like the experience of how much matchup experience you have, like, is crazy, because I like don't know the history of VGC that well. So coming into VGC, I didn't necessarily know you as the Tyranitar guy. Actually, my first introduction was like who the Tyranitar guy is like the Joe Brown meme, like that was my first introduction. Yeah,
it's called Tyranitar Sweeps the Nation. First of all.
My bad. But it's like crazy, like looking at the experience you've had, because you've told us at events too of like these spreadsheets and like all this other stuff, like the background, like all this stuff that you have about these Pokemon. And I think that's like the craziest thing.
Yeah, some of that's made retrospectively to rationalize the plays, but yeah, I've done so much retro prep, and it can help with like anything I could see in Reg H. I've probably played against it with Tyranitar at some point in the past. Even if they're not Pokemon that are popular in this generation, they were probably popular at some point when I was still playing with Tyranitar.
I think the other thing that's so interesting about this, like the T-Tar Garchomp core that you're so known for, is whenever anyone thinks of Tyranitar, they think of like Excadrill, right? Or I guess you could think of Lycanroc in this generation before Excadrill got added to the Pokedex. And not that you are against that strategy, but you're kind of using the old school version with the Sand Veil, and like 90% chance to hit and whatever. And if they're already using a Rock Slide, then it's even less accurate. Where most people assume Sand is T-Tar Excadrill, and for the most part, you haven't used that. But like we have seen it creep up a little bit in popularity this season. There was the one regional, I think Niels won with Excadrill. But I mean, all of, many generations. T-TAR Extra Drill was a very good core together, especially Gen 7 with the Z move. So you didn't have to EQ your own teammate because we didn't have Terra flying back then. You would have had to hit your own Tyranitar with the Earthquake if you didn't have it. So why? I guess, what are the pros and cons to like a quote unquote sand abuser like a Extra Drill or what's the electric one? What's the Drake, not Drakeazult. What's the other one that gets Sand Rush? The one that's Dracovich's
Stoutland? Oh, do one of those three get Sand Rush? Yeah.
Well, Stoutland also gets.
That's the first Sand Rush Pokemon I think of.
The Arctozolt or whatever. Doesn't one of those 4 abominations get Sand Rush?
I didn't know if that was the case.
I think so. Sierra, what's the one they used in the draft?
Dracozolt? I don't know if it gets Sand Rush.
I think one of those 4 gets Sand Rush, but regardless.
It gets Hustle.
Well, we know that's how you beat Wolf. You hustle them, That's how it happens.
I did every move.
All right, so the question, what's the difference between a sand abuser on the T-TAR squad, like someone who needs the speed for double or more damage or whatever, compared to the way that you play Tyranitar?
Yeah, I mean, I've used Excadrill before. Like, I got top 8 at NAIC in 2018 with Excadrill, exactly the format you mentioned, where it had the Z move, it had more finishing power. And to me, that's the important distinction. Is I actually had to eat some crow because the week before Niels went and won that regional, I was just telling everyone that Excadrill was a terrible Pokemon and no one should be using Excadrill in this format, and then it went and won a regional. But I still don't like it. I wouldn't use it in this format because I'm just looking for something different out of that spot. I think Garchomp and Excadrill, at least the way I play Garchomp, plays very differently. Where Garchomp has very little finishing power. It's just going to stay on the field for a really long time, being kind of annoying until it can find its opportunity. Whereas Excadrill needs to be out fishing for KOs very quickly, which is not a way I like to play. If you're fishing for KOs aggressively, you're playing much more of a will they protect here, will they double target there, trying to get into the mind of your opponent. Not my favorite skill in Pokemon. And so I would rather just try to bide time and look for opportunities through positional play, which I think Garchomp is a little bit better at.
Also, I looked it up. Dracozolt does get Sand Rush.
Wow.
I mean,
COVID wiped my memories of Sword and Shield, so until they come back in Scarlet and Violet, I don't remember.
Bro, could you imagine Terra Water Choice Band Dracovich? Could you imagine it in the rain?
Oh, just one-shotting everything? Yeah.
I thought I was still thinking about talking about Dracozolt, so I was trying to key that together.
I was trying to process Sand Rush Dracovich.
I'm just
you could do some skill swap stuff, you never know. Now, I think there's some Pokemon that we are very fortunate are not in this generation. Dracovich is one of them. Obviously, Shedinja, Xerneas, right? These are Pokemon that we're very happy. Or Zygarde Complete or whatever would be really annoying if you just Terra out of the 4 times weakness, right? So we'll see them back in Gen 9 probably, but I do miss the top of Pokemon. I wish they were in this generation. But you've been playing for so long, and that gives you so much more experience over the field. You talk about this particular team, and that's what I think is so cool, because it's not just that you like using Garchomp, right? You even had the plushes on the stream at LAIC. You particularly do enjoy the substitute leftover set where many other people run Choice Scarf or Life Orb or some other type of thing. But it's not that you're using the same Pokemon for success for a generation, or IRL generation, not a Pokemon generation at this point, but you're using a very particular subset, and it's not just Tyranitar that you're using, and other people might build differently. It's a very specially defensive Tyranitar that can tank a Focus Blast when it's 4 times weak to Focus Blast, right? Does that ever actually hold you back in team building your preference towards that type of strategy? Does it hurt, or is it because you have so much practice it's always a benefit? You know what I mean?
I'm sure there are situations where it was the wrong decision, right? I remember people telling me that they went and tried my 2018 team and just universally lost with it because maybe it wasn't very good. But that's why I mentioned worrying sometimes that it is an anchor weighing me down, but I commit to it anyway. And it's a difficult decision, right? Because then if you're going to say this just isn't working and I need to go somewhere else, you have to start from scratch. You have to have an idea or someplace you want to build off of. It goes out of my comfort zone, maybe forces me to also change my comfort zone in terms of matchup experience. Like if suddenly I'm using something very standard, I'm not used to playing from a position where my opponent knows more about the matchup than I do. And so you have to make more unexpected plays when that's the case. Whereas I can just make the same play I kind of would always make because you don't know yet what that play is. And I've had some experience, like success trying to do that in the past, but also tournaments where I just wish I had stuck to my guns anyway.
It's always like sometimes like, man, I made the wrong call, but the other times like, man, I should have trusted myself. And if you're right 50% of the time, then like you don't know which way to lean. But like with this format, with the core and with LAIC, because I remember when we were working together in Louisville, you were talking about you were excited for LAIC and your team was, you were cooking for it, and it ended up being pretty damn true. If it wasn't for like a really tough matchup in Top Cut, who knows how far you could have gone in the LAIC run there. So what was it about that preparation? Like get us into the weeks leading up. We know you went to Latin America early. You played in a special event, and you used this team that got top 16 at LAIC. But like, what was that whole process like? Bring us through it.
Yeah, I mean, I knew from the moment Reggae was announced I was going to use the Corvette at Garchomp Tyranitar again, for better or worse. And so tried lots of different things in those spots, and it is really about trying to solve matchup problems. I think sometimes it can feel like I'm just ignoring the metagame because I'm sticking to these things, but actually it's sometimes the opposite, where these have to be very reactive to try to make these three Pokemon work despite what the metagame is. And because I'm kind of locking myself into certain matchup spreads, right? Like my Rain matchup was never any good. This Volcarona matchup was never any good, and I'm just trying to solve the puzzle of how to do it. And so trying lots of different Pokemon. But I felt like the matchup spread was good enough in general. And maybe that's like a downside of the way I do it is I'm at the whims of what the matchups look like. So in 2023, they were quite good. I got 2 top cuts, but I didn't feel like it was because I had done especially well in the team building or anything. It just felt like, okay, the team is good right now, and I hope it's good right again in the future. And when I was talking with Louisville, I felt like things were looking pretty good. Like the teams that were popular were things I was ready to go up against.
I mean, then even just like current day, like prepping for an event, like is there times where you do kind of wonder, like, this isn't looking too good? Because I don't recall the last time I saw you without a T-Tar.
I backed out of it at EUIC in 2023. I had a version I was working on. I couldn't solve certain matchup problems, like when if Fluttermane and Chiyu together, it was just like overwhelming offense when they could also threaten T-Tar.
That's not a pair that you can just take a loss to.
Yeah, and so I used a different team. Like I talked to Aaron. He had a team that Wolf had been practicing with, and I ended up using that team. I think ironically, I solved my matchup problems on the train from the airport in London. I put Lycanroc in my team builder for the first time, and like just led Rock Slide against Fluttermane and Chiyu, and it was like, okay, wait, maybe this works. But I played one match against Aaron saying that he beat me anyway. Maybe it was just because I'd just gotten off a plane. I didn't even I'd flown overnight. I didn't even sleep. I was just like, Aaron, I have to see if this works. And then he beat me. So I went away from the Tyranitar. But then ended up going back to that team for the regionals the next few weeks. Got 4 top 16, 2 top 8s, 2 top 16s out of fixing matchups with Lycanroc. So that's one of the cases where I wish I had just done it anyway and stuck to Tyranitar, because I was not ready to play Nasty Plot Chiyu against a field of people who had played that matchup before. I didn't do very well in that tournament.
Yeah, I think it's so impressive with you and some of the other great players that we have on the broadcast team. Jake just made his day 2 finish. I think it was 1 game off Top Cut in Sacramento, right? I want to say.
I believe so, yeah.
And then obviously Aaron Zhang, one of the best players ever, and you're having these great performances as well, multiple top cuts and everything over the last couple seasons. How do you balance that? Because I'm gonna be honest. I mean, let's lift the curtain here. I lost to a Slitherwing in a caster battle. You know what I mean? I'm not out here I have the chance to go top 16 at LAIC like you did. So how do you balance trying to stay in the meta for commentary and being able to be the best commentator that you can be, but also still trying to dedicate enough time to being the best player that you can be for the events that you're not casting? Because I think it's very tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think the prep is pretty different here. I don't know if do you approach your prep for playing versus casting any differently? Because I use different teams. Like I'm in a ladder with like standard teams if I'm just trying to get a feel for what matchups are like. Because I can't explain a match on broadcast based on how well it plays into Tyranitar and Garchomp. So I just queue in with a rain team or something and try to get a feel for how those teams play. But of course, that's not how I'm practicing to play, and so definitely have to know which is coming next to be gearing up for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have the most experience with the prepping for an event, and when I do play an event, it's like, well, I'm not getting a Worlds invite anyways, and like, I don't know what to play, so I'm just gonna lock in whatever somebody gives me a couple of hours before the event starts and just hope it works. And it, normally doesn't do so hot. Still have not learned my lesson on that, but I think regardless, like, it's always going to be a very different prep because there's things, and I think that's too where top players that think like, oh, I can slot into commentary really easily kind of underestimate the different types of prep you have to do for an actual broadcast, because it's a lot more than just the knowledge of your own team, right? Like, you have to know all the teams. You have to have some sort of level on every single team that somebody's using to an adequate enough level, not just mastering one. And I think that's something that people forget, and I think that we sometimes get like criticized for, because Len, I can commentate your match, I'll never know your team as well as you do, like, right? So I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, because oftentimes team like matchups can have very specific dynamics down to those two teams, and if you haven't seen that match play out before, it's a lot harder to give the same level of insightful analysis if you've seen it happen 10 times before and kind of know what's important, know what players are likely to do, what's going to be valued in kind of the macro level of the play.
And this is something that like is kind of uniquely to esports commentary, because like, if you look at it, if you're watching Monday Night Football, like Troy Aikman, yes, he won 3 Super Bowls and he is a Hall of Fame quarterback or whatever. But it's not like he's casting Monday Night Football and then he's going and playing in rec football leagues to like, you know what I mean, to keep his skills sharp or whatever, the way that a Pokemon caster would. And I think, whenever you're on stream, or Jake or Aaron, or when we have the TCG casters, and they always seem to be in a win-in scenario at the end of day one, right, for the TCG regionals. Like, you're not just representing yourself at that, or at least I should ask, like, do you feel like it only matters, like, you're just internally, I want to win for myself, or is there somewhat of an external pressure of, like, obviously we live in a world where everyone knows you're a part of the broadcast, you're in this round, in this winning in, and we all know who you are, we know what your other job is, and like, is there pressure externally to perform well because you're also a broadcaster that gives you more credibility, or is it just internal pressure that motivates you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably some pressure. You definitely want to represent yourself well and have people then take your analysis seriously based on how you played against them. Also, just more likely that people know who you are ahead of time, which is can be a little bit intimidating.
I mean, I don't even have like the pressure of like having been a top player that was then approached for commentary after. So it's like when you and Jake go out there and like still compete and then come back to commentary, like, I don't know, I feel like there's so much pressure there, but I think it is really, really cool. So I want to ask then too, like, because not everyone knows like where everyone in the commentary team like kind of joined in, kind of like the process for that. So I think it would be really interesting for our listeners too to talk about like you joining the team, like how that kind of all processed and all of that.
Yeah. I guess even before I worked for a long time to get to be on the Pokemon broadcast, doing grassroots broadcasts with Nugget Bridge, and some of that was just being in the right place at the right time. It's like our friends were putting together the website and then needing to cover events, and it kind of fun. And I definitely was a lot rougher at it. If you go back, and I think all those videos are still up there for tournaments 10 years ago. It does not sound as good as it sounds now, especially not without Pokemon's production behind us. But yeah, it was definitely like a learning experience to get better and better at it before finally getting the call up from Pokemon. And I think like I feel like staying relevant as a player helps with that as well. Like, you know, we all kind of approached it in different ways, got into that position in different ways. But I think it was important for me to be able to demonstrate that like I'm still playing at a high enough level that there is like that behind the analysis and to go along with the prior experience casting.
Yeah, because I love casting with Len. I tell everybody we've done 2 regionals together. They were both bangers with the Portland to start the year with Alex Underhill winning that crazy set, and then Louisville as well, the craziness that Louisville had. And I think you bring a good balance to like my silliness or whatever, where I'm trying to be entertaining and I'm trying to tell a story as the play-by-play guy, right? And like I get a little too over invested in a narrative or something, and like you help, not, you don't bring me down, but you bring me back to place. You bring me back to earth. You know what I mean? Like let's get back into the important. Let's just not be entertaining for entertainment's sake. Let's be entertaining about the important aspects, which I appreciate. Like, you know, when we're together.
Yeah, I think we play off each other well because I can take it very seriously, be very buttoned down and focused on the strategy, and I think it's fun to get that balance.
So how do you approach the commentary then? Because we can talk about commentary forever. Like before, obviously, not just preparation beforehand, which you have to go and knowing the teams and everything, but like when you're in the moment working with different people, if you're with me or with Len or with your Len, if you're with me or Sierra or Jake or Evan or like, you know, what is that approach? Because your skill as the color commentator, like you're still trying to present the information and explain it to the audience so they know what's going on, but it is definitely different depending on who you're working with.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, different rapport and different energy with different casters, and I think a lot of that is just making sure to have that rapport at that time. And we're in like the fortunate position to all like know each other well and be friends. And I think hopefully that comes through in the broadcast. I think in the moment, my priority is always like these players that we watch are so good at Pokemon. As someone who tries to be as good as they are and doesn't quite get there, like I think it's really impressive what so many of the top players are able to do week in and week out. And my goal is just to try to explain that as well as possible and show what their thought processes are, how they arrived to this. Because I worry that Pokemon can be a game if you don't have a ton of competitive experience with it. You've just like played, you know, Pokemon your whole life, like playing in-game, beating the Elite Four and being done, and you tune in and the monsters show up and they launch a bunch of big attacks at each other and they get knocked out and somebody wins. And to me, that's like what we're there for. And what I really want to do is like explain how complicated the situations were, what all the thoughts went into the decisions the players made, and how impressive it was that these players do so consistently come out on top and beat giant pools of like competing players.
You sound like my relatives, especially during the Dynamax era. They were gone. They used to understand VGC a little bit. Then they started getting big sometimes, and then they would go back down. And it was, I could never explain to a cousin or an uncle again what was going on.
All you have to say is like Pokemon is now big. Like what?
They got big. Yeah. They're getting big in Pokemon Go now. Did you know that, Joe?
They sure are, and let's move on to the next conversation because I think I interrupted Sierra. I think she was going to say something.
I don't remember now. It's all good.
See, this is why I'm the worst, Len. This is what I do. I went in for a zinger. I wanted to make a little joke, a little jab at my relatives not understand Pokemon, and I completely derailed Sierra's thought. This is what Len has to deal with on commentary, Sierra.
Good luck, Len. I'm just kidding.
It's like balancing exercises, you know, right? You got to figure out to take the zinger, get back on balance, get back in place.
No, there's no balance. It's always the zing, baby. We're zing-tastic over here. I don't know. Sierra, think of something then, since I messed you up.
Thank goodness I'm not casting with you. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But well, I mean, you're about to say like, let's move on to this next topic. Like, what was going to be the next topic, Joe Brown?
Okay, well, we have some other regionals and special events that have taken place, and since we have an analyst on the broadcast here on the podcast to discuss some of the things that have went down recently, this past weekend we had the Boda Special Championship, as well as the Perth Regional Championships down in Australia. So I think we'll start with Perth here. Oliver Ramsey, congratulations to them winning the event. Obviously, there is the lower player number in the Oceania region, but we still know there are still phenomenal players down there that can, compete with the best in the world and always perform well at the worlds and international stages. But this is was this now 3 of the last 4 events that were won by a Blood Moon Ursaluna, I think, if we're looking at it correctly. So
talking about Perth?
In Perth, yeah. So we'll start with you, Len. What has made Bloodborne, or Jesus, I'm the worst.
Are you good?
Oh my God, Blood Moon Ursaluna so prominent in the latter half of Regulation H.
Also, kind of funny little side tangent: Blood Moon Ursaluna, and then it's normal. I don't know. I kind of think that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another way to look at the format right now, is that it is just Ursaluna domination, because you have, LAIC finals with a couple of normal Ursaluna. You have Blood Moon rising popularity. It's just Ursaluna left and right competing differently. I do think this team that won is interesting in that it's not quite in the same mold as so many of the Blood Moon teams that have been successful. It's a little bit more of a balanced team with the Incen and the Amoonguss to go along the Blood Moon. Not quite the male NDD Sneasler, we're just going out on a tear kind of Blood Moon. And Sid, it's the Assault Vest set that's been getting a little bit more popular. Now you have to worry about Blood Moon having a priority move whenever you see it in the Global Challenge or something, because it may be this this Assault Vest set.
Yeah, that was something Adi talked about last week. It was how Assault Vest has kind of taken over compared to Life Orb.
Yeah, I feel like we still see quite a bit of both, but definitely more of a balanced item distribution for Blood Moon than we'd seen kind of at any point in the last year, where it felt like it was just Life Orb all the time. You could just kind of assume it without even needing to read the team sheet. Yeah, it feels like Blood Moon is, it's on Pokemon's logo for Reg-H, right? I think it's what people expected to be good from the beginning, and I think it took some time for people to find the best ways to play it. Sneasler's immediate rise was a huge problem for Blood Moon, right? You're just faster. Blood Moon has to be very fast to be faster than Sneasler and Tailwind, and of course Sneasler can just unburden and then still be faster no matter what, and is threatening big close combats that often Blood Moon can't get out of if it's just running normal Terra. So it felt like it took a long time for the right Blood Moon sets to come together, but it's still just such a ball of stats, right? It has ability to do huge damage. It's very difficult to take off the field in one hit, sometimes even 2 hits, and is just fast enough that you can run these kinds of teams that rely on Tailwind, like we saw in Sacramento, to let Blood Moon get going. And yeah, it seems like it's part of the recipe for the format solved.
I just think it's crazy, so late in this format, these little adjustments that are coming out. Obviously, the Blood Moon Ursaluna, but then also looking at Dragonite. Didn't we start this format where we kind of left off the last one, which was, okay, well, here's the Dragonite. Let's have the extreme speed. Let's have all these different moves. Let's have the Terra Blast. And now it's oh, okay, let's have it. And it's 3 not attacking moves. You have the Tailwind Haze Protect, and then you have the Scale Shot, which wasn't a move on it before. And I don't know, Dragonite's evolution throughout this regulation, I just think is hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the most stunning condensations of a Pokemon ever. This Dragonite was the emblem of moveset diversity to start this format. You had Assault Vest and Choice Band and more supportive sets, and that had been its role kind of this entire generation. Choice Band was maybe the most common, but you had Riley having all the success with Assault Vest in the past, and it just felt like a Pokemon that could do a lot of different things. And I think people launched into this format looking at Incineroar and Rillaboom, a desperate need for inner focus and being immune to Fake Out and Intimidate. And then we just hit a point. I just remember going into ladder one day and playing 5 multi-scale Dragonites in a row and going, oh, I guess that's just what this is now. Every Dragonite you see, no need to read the team sheet except to find out what 4th move it has next to Scale Shot, but we're just totally condensed in. I think one of the biggest reasons for that, well, one is multi-hit moves became valuable. Without Urshifu, you still needed a source of them. Focus Sash became the best item in the game. Sneasler was everywhere, and you wanted to be able to take it down in one hit. But the other piece is that all those other Dragonite sets are huge Terra Hogs, whether it's normal to go extreme speed or flying to start Terra Blasting. Like, you would bring the Dragonite to a game, and if you had to Terra somewhere else, you were...
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck with this Dragonite. You just like wasted a Pokemon. And this doesn't feel like a format where that is very easy to do. I think another way to look at it, like in the LAIC top teams, I don't think at any point in this generation we've had as low of a frequency of offensive Terras as we did in that top cut. Almost every Terra used, and also almost every Terra in the team builder was a defensive Terra, because as offensive as the game got, it became very difficult to reposition, and just like you would get put in a spot where you needed to be able to click a defensive Terra button or you were going to lose the game. And so even Pokemon that had more traditionally had offensive Terras were now running defensive ones. We didn't see things like, obviously, no Urshifu or Fluttermane, but we didn't see those style of Terras like Fluttermane just going Fairy and going out on the offense, or Urshifu going Water and going out on the offense. And so I think Dragonite couldn't be that big of a Terra Hog in a format where you were that reliant on your defensive Terras.
I do also think with Oliver's team in particular, I know didn't invent the throat chop Sneasler, right? But there was a bit of a stretch, especially when we were in Louisville together, where everyone and their mother was clicking coaching in that fourth slot, right? We
had the 2 weeks of coaching. It was not even just Sneasler. It was like every Pokemon was suddenly coaching.
Every Pokemon.
Everybody was coaching, and like on Sneasler, it just never made sense to me. Like, yes, I understand you're fast, you'll make sure it goes off first or whatever. But like but Golden Go has been 40% of the meta the entire time. It's not like Golden Go came out of nowhere, and people were willingly running these Sneasler Dire Claw close combat sets that literally cannot touch Golden Go, right? And I think the Throat Chop and Stellar Terra and Focus Sash that Oliver has here is just like, yes, 40. Like, you look at the top cut of Perth, 8 of the 16 teams in Perth have a Golden Go on it. I don't know what their sets are in particular, but like, you need Throat Chop if your strategy is going to be so reliant on Sneasler doing damage. Like, I don't know how people were getting away with not having Throat Chop.
Oh, I can answer that for you. It's because the thing that you were coaching every time was a King Gambit, which is another really good way to answer Golden, right? Like, if every one of those teams that was fitting coaching had a King Gambit and could just kind of feel confident, I'm not going to lose a game to a Golden Go as long as I have this, then it's a lot easier to rationalize the coaching. Whereas King Gambit, do you see one on the screen here? Like, looking at these top teams?
There's one guy, right, in 8th place.
8th place. One mate that's way in.
And it fell out of top 12 in Stuttgart as well, King Gambit.
The massive rise of Ursaluna really makes life more difficult for King Gambit, right? That's a lot of teams that can just threaten one-hit KOs onto King Gambit, and that's not a Pokemon that ever wants to be threatened with one-hit KO, right? Like, its value comes from not being able to get taken off the field in one hit. But I think there's this is the constant movement and rotation in Pokemon that means that things never stagnate too much, because when you have King Gambit drop some in usage, then you have 6 Golden Goes in the top 8 in Stuttgart, because Golden Go is like an incredibly strong Pokemon when it doesn't have really stable answers everywhere. And that feels like it's been the story of these final few weeks of Red Age has been Golden Go supremacy, right? It's just all over the place.
Yeah. Also, the shout outs to Gunter's almost 2018 looking team over here. If Golden Go existed back then with the Gyarados and
just close your eyes. It's a Garchomp.
Yeah. Close your eyes.
I think I've used those 6 Pokemon if it's a Garchomp before, so.
There you go. Nice little Double Dragon core. Second place team, Dimitri, has how about this Kilowattrel? We know we got some fans of Kilowattrel in the pod right now. Sierra kicking herself for not predicting Kilowattrel at what was it, LASE, or was it Sacramento? I forget which one.
Yep.
So
LASE, the regional, the event where I could have been so right with the predictions that I trusted myself, but I'm stupid and I didn't, so I was wrong. So yep.
So why did you like Kilowattrel then, and why is it doing well here?
I just think, I don't necessarily think Kilowattrel's, the best Pokemon. Do not get me wrong. It's just, certain teams, it could work as the 6th, being able to have something that can tailwind, also just, it's just kind of, that niche-y little thing that you can kind of make work. And if like it's one of those things, I think with this format more than anything, you can just have 5 solid Pokemon and put whatever is the 6. Like heck, you could have 4 solid Pokemon and put it whatever is the last 2. Like I don't think it's really that serious. It's a Tailwind Pokemon. You can T-Bolt stuff. Like there's a lot of Terra Water. That's gone. Terra Flying later, so it's fine. You know.
Yeah, I think Kilowattrol's an interesting one to look at because it kind of rose independently in several places, right? And with very different sets. This one is Focus Sash competitive. I had Focus Sash and Volt Absorb, and you saw several players both in Sacramento and LAIC with choice specs. I think you hit on one of the really key reasons, at least one of the reasons I used it, which was how much Water Terra there was. Like, there was a point where it felt like every Pokemon was Water Terra in this format, and so being able to chase those afterwards with really fast Thunderbolts. And then the other is anything faster than Sneasler is pretty good in this format. I think there's been some reaction to that with how much more instant unburden there has been on Sneasler over the last few weeks compared to earlier on in the format, where they might unburden, but it was like because the Focus Sash get broken, it's like a little bit of an answer to Tailwind more than proactive unburdening. But like Kilowattrol being faster than Sneasler, being able to Tailwind to get your whole team faster than Sneasler, or just threaten an Air Slash makes it valuable, and then you can kind of choose your ability for what specific Pokemon you want some extra help with, right? I think everyone but me has chosen competitive and getting some help against Incineroar, so you can get a big boost. But then Volt Absorb helps against Archaludon, and Electabuzz has its spot as well.
Yeah, I like that. It's a Pokemon that, like, you know, when I'm team building, I don't think of often because I fall into my own traps, right? Like we all do. Like we just keep putting the same Pokemon and the same spreads in, like just some glue pieces to see how a core can work. But like there's inherent value in Kilowattrol in just specific aspects, right? An inherently fast Pokemon, a good offensive typing and flying in electric, where you mentioned everything is Terra Water, competitive for anti-intimidate or snarl or something like that. Like I think Kilowattrol, it's actually, it does a surprising amount of damage that people are not with the competitive boost.
For being +2, it does prevent, like, Kilowattrol does do a surprising amount of damage. I just think it's surprisingly little. Someone who's used
Kilowattrol. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm not, I'm not bulky enough on my spreads, but like I have been one shot by Kilowattrol's on ladder. Like, and I'm like, oh wow, not only is it faster than me, but it also took me out before I could respond.
I think I grew to understand Joe Sierra better in a conversation we had in LAIC. Maybe you can tell me if I'm rooting too much into this. But I did not do well in Argentina, and I'd had the same Kilowattrol. And I mentioned to him that I made a play I'd never made in practice before. I saw a Jumpluff on the other side. And so I thought Joe might find this interesting. So I had Jumpluff on the other side, and I switched in Tyranitar to cancel Chlorophyll, and I Stellar Terastallized my Kilowattrol and went for Air Slash into Jumpluff, thinking I would just pick up a nice, clean KO. And before I could even finish telling that anecdote, Joe went, "That doesn't KO." How do you know that? How do you know?
How does he know
Stellar Air Slash into Jumpluff? There can't be anyone but me doing this. How do you possibly know that? He was right. It didn't KO. So instead what happened was I did not KO the Jumpluff. I got Kilowattrol overheated down to Focus Sash, which eject padded the Torkoal out. Then my own Kilowattrol went down to Sand because I switched out T-Tar, and I've never had made a more disastrous turn 1 play. And it was because Kilowattrol did surprisingly little damage.
Bunch of nerds. Like, I'll tell you, like there'll be a bunch of us sitting on a call, like when there's a regional going on, or just watching somebody like queue their matches, and like they're scary good with like knowing if something will KO or not, like instantly, like down to like the exact little like range. Like someone's like, "Oh, this will KO," and then 3 people chime in, "No, it won't." And like they're all stupid smart at the game, so it's like I don't know. Just hours of the game, I can't comprehend it. Like it's actually crazy. Watching an event, they'll like watch like. Or even, like, there was a little watch party when Joe was having his matches, and, like, people would sit there, and they're like, this is exactly how much this is going to do, and this is why Joe shouldn't do it, or why Joe should do it. And it's just like, what? I don't know. I think it just comes down to them, just, like, he's a nerd. Like, it's just, I don't know, simple. Simple as that. I can't do that. That's crazy though.
Right,
there's no way he would look that up and know that. I do not think that there's any world
it was
where
intuition.
That is something
I think it was intuition.
I don't think he's ever like calced that. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but like that just doesn't. Yeah.
I guess it's probably just some normal air slash and some mental math for the Stellar, but I'm just like flummoxed when he immediately knew the count.
All right, well, I might be wrong about Kilowattrel, but my moral of the story, my point on Kilowattrel is that there are some moments where there are certain Pokemon that are just they have inherent value as a Pokemon in a particular format. Remember Bramblegast in, was that Reg D, where, it's immune to close combat and resists surging strikes. That's pretty, and it gets a boost from the Tornadus that's right next to Urshifu, right? Like, so, because it can't hit it with, what was it, Air Slash or the other one? I forget. We'll run that back in another day. But, like, that was a Pokemon that was literally only good in that little pocket of time, and I feel like Kilowattrel is also in that moment right now.
Yeah, I think Kilowattrel has a little bit more innate benefit, but I think that's a really fun way to team build and to play Pokemon. Like, anytime we put up that graphic that's like the top 12, you can treat it like a puzzle, a Sudoku to solve, right? Like, what I'm looking at these top 6 Pokemon, if you can find some niche Pokemon that beats like 5 out of 6, you can probably start a team from there. It only is good as long as those are the 6 Pokemon. Like, as soon as the metagame drifts a little bit away, that won't be good anymore. I remember earlier this year, I was team building very seriously around Sap Sipper, Parasong, Azumarill. Because we had a format where like Dark Urshifu is #1 in usage, and Water Ogerpon was 2 or something like that. It was like, none of these Pokemon can hurt Sap Sipper, physically bulky Azumarill. But then, like, by a month later, Dark Urshifu was not #1 in usage, and the team was terrible. But yeah, if you could solve with the right Pokemon at the right time, it can be pretty fun.
Okay, let's see. Is there anything else that stands out from?
I mean,
Perth?
we got the Gyarados. That's kind of quirky. Look at this. We got this thing back. I forget what it's called. Like the other thing that you can put. Yeah, the other thing you can put with Torkoal. That's there. Farigiraf making a not so common appearance in top.
I think the Gyarados is really interesting. I've always been a huge fan of this Gyarados set. I started my Reg Age team building with the super bulky support Gyarados, and have played it in a lot of formats in the past.
Lame, Len. I want to Dragon Dance. I want to Terra Blast on people.
No, I just want to Thunder Wave everything. I want permanent speed control and a chance to chip some things with Waterfall and get valuable Intimidates. But I think it's interesting to look at why this Pokemon hasn't been very good, because it has a lot of really innate strong things. Like, the Intimidate is obviously good. You have a lot of good defensive characteristics against top Pokemon. I think that if Archaludon didn't exist, this Gyarados set would be a top 12 usage Pokemon in the same way that it was in Reg B a couple years ago. So I think there could be Pokemon that are almost like single-handedly held down. And I think that's what's happening to this bulky Gyarados set right now.
Yeah, I mean, back when it was a top 12 Pokemon, and what was it, the Tang Gang were top cutting every event with Thunder Wave, Waterfall. Like, Archaludon literally didn't exist. Duraludon just stunk up the place, So that's I think Gyarados is one of those Pokemon. It always is better in the lower power level stuff, but here in this not low power level, but not high power level format that we're in right now, this kind of mid-tier power level has not been able to exist because of the not Basculegion, Archaludon, but there's other more popular water types. And the other issue is the 4 move slot syndrome. Like, obviously you like your version of it, Sierra, and I like doing more offensive damage to Gyarados, but
I don't like any version of it. I want to be clear here. I think it's a fraud mon.
I like Helping Hand over Protect, but I wouldn't describe it as 4 move slots. So you're there to click Waterfall, Thunder Wave, taunt a distant third, and the 4th move slots.
Okay, not for move slot, but like it could do. It's trying to it's not a jack of all trades. How about that? Like, you have to run it one way. Yes, you have to choose. Do you want to Dragon Dance, Terra Blast on people, or do you want to taunt Thunder Wave, Waterfall? And I don't know. Maybe that's why it's down a little. I mean, the rest of the team is cool, right? T-Tar, Extra Drill, Dragonite as well. So definitely a cool team. And then Sam Pendelis, World's runner-up. We're using Armarouge and Didi. No big deal. No big deal. Just saying. Just throwing it out there. Former almost world champion decides that Armarouge and Didi is a good strategy. We'll see what happens. What about Talonflame? Did you guys see the tweet that everybody's freaking out because Talonflame can learn Rain Dance? What are our thoughts? Are we cooking, or are people being silly?
Or like people are actually thinking, like saying that you should put it on a team? It wasn't just a random piece of trivia?
I think there was some consideration implied in some of the tweets. There were multiple tweets about Rain Dance Talonflame this week.
There was a moment in the Global Challenge this weekend where I got scared a Talonflame was about to Rain Dance on me because it was next to an Archaludon. And I was like, how worried should I be that that's the button that's about to get clicked?
So are we cooking?
No.
No.
Just put a power herb on.
But literally anything else.
You guys don't know? Just no faith in Rain Dance Talonflame. We've had a decade to make it work, and nobody's figured it out.
I've been a Talonflame hater since day one, so...
Yes,
I love Talonflame.
Don't ask Ray Rizzo his opinions on Talonflame.
Talonflame is awesome. Though I've not enjoyed playing it past, like, in this, like, format or anything else.
That was actually a fun fact. It was a little behind the scenes moment for our podcast listeners, Len. When I was working with the production team on the Seijun video, that I was reading old articles on Nugget Bridge, and Ray had won a 2014 regional. I can't remember off the top of my head, and it was one of the first X and Y regionals, and he just like trashed Talonflame for like a bunch of paragraphs.
Yeah, he and I were at the regional together, very much agreement about how bad we thought Talonflame was. This is a shared opinion.
And so I was trying to find a way to include like the opinion of the Nugget Bridge of how he's like, Talonflame sucks, it's bad, and then like show that Talonflame won Worlds the year that he said Talonflame sucks. And then I remember I talked to I talked to Evan about it, because Evan, obviously he was essentially a ghostwriter. He was Ray Rizzo's junior, essentially, in those Nugget Bridge articles, Evan. And I told him, I was like, isn't it funny that Ray Rizzo says Talonflame sucks and then it wins Worlds? And then Evan, just like you, he's like, yeah, but Talonflame does suck.
Yeah.
I can't win with any of you. I can't win.
Look, I have no problem saying a Pokemon is terrible and then having it win. I just said I did it with Excadrill a few weeks ago. I think the worst one for me that I'll never be able to live down. I used to, on a website where we're publishing Pokemon strategy and guides, I was like editor of it. I was getting to decide what strategies we were going to endorse and put up on the website. And someone came and said they wanted to write an article about how to use Gothitelle in 2011. And I said, no, the Pokemon is too bad. We don't need to publish a guide on how to use Gothitelle. And then, of course, it won Worlds like 4 months later. So it kept everyone from those secret Gothitelle strategies accidentally.
Damn. You could have changed history right there. It might not have won Worlds if people knew about it.
Well, if this person had pitched me on how Ray was going to use Gothitelle, I would have gone, oh, good. And also, let me start my team builder up. But that was not the same Gothitelle that eventually won.
All right. Well, let's quickly go over Boda, because we got some time and we've been going for a bit here. So let's go for just some quick hits on this. Max Morales, congratulations, winning the special event. Annihilate back on top. Feels like Annihilate was really prominent in the beginning of Regulation H, especially in Lille and some of the other events. Fevzi had that one top 8 performance with the double beat up comp Annihilate and Archaludon team that became very popular in this format. But there is the regular Ursaluna, as you're mentioning. Look at that. What is that?
Look at all those Ursalunas. I mean, it's basically every
slots.
Team.
Yeah, and 7 slots, except for Alejandro's team, have N Ursaluna on their squad. It's why is it so good? It's like 50 or 52 speed. You got to take a turn to set up with the burn orb. Like, why is it so good, Len?
So many stats. It's just so many stats. You're not getting that many stats out of any of your other Pokemon. They're very well distributed. ultimately, if you can figure out how to use the biggest ball of stats in the format effectively, that's usually a good way to go about it. And in this case, it actually answers a lot of very popular Pokemon very well. But I think getting the speeds down has been the key for Luna. You mentioned the 50 speed, like that's the main hurdle for it to overcome. It's not quite slow enough, not quite fast enough. And I think the two Ursalunas have gone very different directions. The physical Ursaluna has become all about being able to go mixed speed, kind of sitting at a place where you can choose Trick Room or Tailwind depending on the matchup. Whereas the Blood Moon just seems to have endorsed cosplaying as a very fast Pokemon and then seeing if the team can make it work. But yeah, I mean, I expect to see that continue. Like, there's a reason Pokemon like Archaludon and Ursaluna that have the most stats and Dragonite as well can be so consistently good.
I think, like, beyond the fact that there's just like bear country over here with all these, I think the next most interesting thing to me about this is looking at Sebastian Escalante's team, Charizard. Like, obviously, it's not the first Charizard we've seen, considering, like, Marco's team. But when I look at, okay, well, Charizard on, like, a non-hard Sun team, like, you do have the Whimsicott for the Sun, but, like, all the other stuff, like, I don't know, I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, like, put words in someone else's mouth, but I would see this team and interpret it as an Ursaluna team that then needs to KO Steel types. And so Charizard, very good at that, right? And you can kind of pick and choose your Tailwind offense. Like, it's a great way to play super aggressively. It's hard to lead something that's safe into both Whimsicott and Charizard and Whimsicott Blood Moon. And so you're, like, anyone up against this is going to be in a little bit of matchup roulette.
I do like how Whimsicott, because that's one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. It's my favorite Gen 5 Pokemon. Its last two iterations has been tied. It's just been completely silly. Like, this format, Whimsicott, it doesn't have to be on a Blood Moon Ursaluna team, but it very much has been prominent on these Blood Moon teams to help get its speed up and have the priority boosted Tailwind to make it faster. And then in Reg G, there were all the Whimsicott Miraidon teams. So it's either like Whimsicott has been like pulling the slowest, fattest Pokemon up to normal speed, or it's been like the fastest Pokemon, 135 speed, that doesn't even need Tailwind. It's also been supporting just because everyone else is running Tailwind. Like, I just like that Whimsicott. It's working all over the speed spectrum to bring everybody up.
What else?
I think Whimsicott's Tailwind, like, it's probably the best emergency Tailwind in the game, right? I think it'll always have a place for that reason. I think Miraidon relied on that part of it a little bit more than these teams do. You often see teams that are more like proactive Tailwind being Talonflame, right? Like Talonflame, you easier to just lead it, be able to go out on the offense with both Talonflame and your other attacker or Tailwind as you need to. Whimsicott's better at, like, maybe I have to pivot it into the field and then Tailwind, but it's very easy to pivot it onto the field and make that happen. You can see some of the tools in this team to play that way as well, which is a lot of how we saw it in Reg G with the Miraidon. When you might, like, play a different game, let your opponent have Tailwind, be kind of behind somewhere, but if you can, like, position Whimsicott at the right point in the middle of the game, it's very strong.
What else do we got from...
There was a second Charizard.
As shocking as all the bears are, I think there are actually more Dragonites than there are Ursalunas.
That's crazy.
There's more Ursalunas by 2.
Okay.
If I'm seeing this
right.
We're
kind of
if we're batching them together.
If we're batching,
but if we say Charizard, who kind of looks like Dragonite, if we add the Charizards and Dragonites together, and then the two Ursalunas,
then it's tied.
What are you shaking your head for?
Then
Charizard
tied.
Absolutely is.
You guys see that there's a Meowscarada in Top Cut, by the way? Meowscarada?
A classic last place in Top Cut Pokemon.
What?
How many originals has Meowscarada taken last place in day 2 of? I think that is its forever spot in my mind.
Bro, Terra fighting, close combat, Ceruledge, let's go.
I think Meowscarada having so little success in Reg H has been kind of interesting, right? I think people expected it to have more because of where it's set at usage in Reg A, and it gaining some really valuable tools. This one doesn't actually even have Triple Axle, but I think Triple Axle is like an incredibly powerful move. It's one of those moves that just by a Pokemon having it, it can make a Pokemon more relevant. And Meowscarada got it since Reggae. And I think the reasons for it doing so poorly are a little harder to break apart, because its speed should be really valuable to it in a format where everything else is pretty much below. We've seen so little Meowscarada having success.
Yeah, it is true. I do remember the conversation, like, oh wow, Meowscarada's back, and but like maybe King Gambit, Incineroar, right? All these dark types make it tough for
Incin is really bad for it, right? Like you're one hit KO by a Flare Blitz at any moment, Intimidate, gets both stabs resisted. Yeah, that's true.
Cerule Edge also last place of Top Cut, where it also belongs. That's my boy, though. I'm allowed to say that. All right, let's close out of this. Let's do our predictions for Tyranitar. Now we're not going to know everything. Let's just put it out. We've never actually predicted correctly who's going to win an event. We will get there one day. I got so close with Len. You have no idea how much I was flexing the entirety of LAIC when you won on stream, when you made Top Cut. I mean, I did message you in the Discord. I did tag you and stuff. Were you aware that you were like my horse at the Kentucky Derby? I had the house on you, or no?
No, I didn't realize that I was risking like bankrupting the family with all the bets. I apologize for not taking it any further.
No, I'm very proud, because that's probably the closest we've ever come, except for Sierra not trusting her gut. Besides that, that's the closest we've ever come. I could have
guessed Marco Fierro for LAIC, and I didn't do it.
She didn't do it.
I didn't do it.
Guess her stupid boyfriend like an idiot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then I couldn't even guess him for the next event, which he almost then won. He got second. Like, I do
all right, so let's do quick predictions here for Tyranitar. Let's each come up with one question, and we'll ask. I'll go first if it needs you guys, or it helps you guys, like with more time, so you can think of something. So it could be anything, like most commonly used Steel type, or which Pokemon is going to finish in 7th place on day 1 usage. Like any type of fun prediction you can think of. We've done things like what will be the first Dire Claw condition that is status on stream. We did that for Louisville. That was a fun one, right? So I'll go first. I noticed in Perth the amount of Amoonguss, and then of course the Sinistcha. There were 7 Rage Powder Pokemon in top 8, if you obviously include Sinistcha there, and then the 9th place finisher was also an Amoonguss. So maybe the little mushroom is back in the format. So I'm going to ask, how many Rage Powder users, not follow me, no Magmars, no Electabuzz, how many
they
Rage
have to actually
Powder
have Rage Powder?
Correct. They have to have it on their set. So like if
Jump
someone has
count.
Right, I mean, I guess if somebody does bring up...
Unless it's one with like, Rage Powder.
Yeah, we'll check. We'll count next week. How many Rage Powder users in top 8 of Toronto?
2.
2? Wow, you're not a fan. You think Canadians aren't a fan of Amoonguss?
They're not Germans. We're not in.
That's true. That's true.
Because I'm almost ready to say like 6 after that top. But I think I don't think we'll see quite as much of it. I'm gonna go 4, because I think there'll be like 2 or 3 Amoonguss and 1 or 2 Sinistchas.
Yeah, I think that's the tough spot when you look at a thing like Perth and how that would extrapolate out to the other regions. Because if you look at prior events, there's a lot more Magmar and Electabuzz, particularly Electabuzz, and it can happen, but you don't often put Electabuzz and Amoonguss on the same team, right? Like you could do it, I guess, but it doesn't happen too often. So it's a tough call, because for every Electabuzz you're going to see in cut, or every Clefairy or Vivillon, I guess Vivillon would count because it would have Rage Powder. Like all those Pokemon don't have all those teams don't have Amoonguss. So I will be optimistic. I'll say 5. I'll say more than half of the top 8 are going to have either Amoonguss or Sinistcha, because I've been on the Sinistcha train for like a month and a half now. I think it's a really fun Pokemon, especially with these Archaludon teams healing it up and stuff.
All right. My question. How many Charizards are going to be in day 2?
Ooh.
Considering that we're not just seeing Marco running it now, but we've seen other ones, but it's still in my opinion, feels like a pretty volatile Pokemon.
I think it's fun.
Fun doesn't mean good, Joe Brown.
You got me. He's only an international champion. My bad.
Yeah.
I think there'll be a good number. I think lots of people have picked up that team and had a decent amount of success with it. It is a hard team to play, though. I've piloted a few times. I've watched my friends pilot it. You have so many options available to you in how to approach any given matchup that it's a very difficult team to get right.
What's the usual amount of day 2 people? Sorry. Just like, is it like 50, 60, something like that in day 2?
There were 65 in Sacramento.
Okay.
I'm going to go 4. I think that might be a high estimate. I don't know how many there were in Sacramento.
That feels high. That feels high to me. I don't want to steal.
4 feels high?
That 4 feels high to me. I think it's rough. I think Len was saying it's tough to pilot. Like, we're talking day 2, not day 1. I think little Timmy's gonna show up with his bottle of glue and his Charizard team, as he should, and he's not gonna make day 2 because he's gonna run to some tough battles. I'm going 1. I'm saying 1 team, 1 Charizard in day 2.
I had to think now. I originally wanted to say 6, but now I'm thinking
6 out of 60 is like 10%, right? That's almost top 12. Like,
yeah, like that is, yeah. That's so. I didn't quite realize how much it was, so I'm gonna cut that in half and say 3.
Now you make Len look crazy. I like it.
Yeah, now I'm
exactly
the most bullish on Charizard. So I gotta start getting all the Charizard merch out, get a banner going.
There you go.
All right, Len. Think of a fun little prediction for us to keep track of over the weekend.
Yeah, I've got a question. It's a 2-part question. I hope that's okay.
Sure.
Part 1: what spot and usage will Sneasler be in day 1? And then part 2: does it go up or down in day 2?
Ooh, I love this. Is why they pay you the big bucks, Len, because this is a great question, great conversation.
But when I tried to ask 2 questions about usage, Joe Brown gave me trouble for like the next 5 minutes on. You said 1 question, and now you're asking 2. All right, keep going, Joe Brown.
Well,
keep going.
You're a host. You're a guest. Len is a guest. There's a difference.
I didn't break the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Unreal.
There's a difference. Unreal. What are your thoughts here? What are you thinking?
I think you'll be number 1 on day 1, and the usage will go up for day 2.
All right.
I like that. It's very possible, right? We've seen it happen many times that it was like 45% and then 51% on day 2. I don't know. I mean, there was...
You can just put Sneasler on anything now.
Stuttgart, wasn't it Stuttgart that Incineroar had higher usage or something on day 1, something like that?
It wasn't number 1 in Sacramento either.
Wow. Okay. I will say Sneasler... me thinking Incineroar is number 1 doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if something else becomes number 1. But I will say Sneasler is second on day 1, and it'll go higher. It'll go up to first on day 2.
All right, I'm gonna go I'm torn between 3 and 4. I'm not.
Oh wow!
I'm really like thinking Sneasler usage might be on its way down right now. But I'm going to go 3. I think there'll still be a good amount out. I think it's still a reasonable reaction to how much Ursaluna we're seeing, and a lot of people have been team building all season with it.
What do you think is first, second, and like potentially even third then?
Well, I think Rillaboom was 1. Is that right? In Sacramento.
Yeah, Golden Go was like 45%.
Yeah, I think Golden Go, Rilla, and Sin are all reasonable picks to be 1 through 3. That would then push Sneasler down to 4. With the way, like, if you'd asked me this question like Sunday afternoon, well, after Stuttgart, that's probably what I would have guessed as 1 through 3. Right? We've seen some evidence of things moving in that way. I also wouldn't be that shocked to see an Ursaluna like suddenly in the top 6. Right? I'm not sure it's going to be Sneasler, but we've seen so much of it, and lots of those teams are easy to pick up and kind of fun to play. But yeah, I'll go 3, but then I actually do think it goes up. I think the ones that show up are going to have a good time. It feels very good into the format, I think, still right now.
So we're all optimistic. We all think Sneasler's going to do higher in day 2. And that, you know, that definitely tracks here because we are so pro Sneasler on this podcast, you know, regardless of what any of the comments say, we're just all
love to see my girls succeed.
Exactly. So it makes sense that we're so positive on Sneasler like usual. Okay. Now,
I think I have a very skewed Sneasler perception because by spending the entire season playing like 5 poison resists and 2 immunities, no one's ever clicked Nightclaw. I see it like every 10 games. It's just a close combat Pokemon as far as I'm concerned. So it's the most honest. It just comes out with a Focus Sash, Sand breaks the Focus Sash, it close combats once, it goes away. Well, I don't know what everyone complains about.
Yeah, what do we all just play Corviknight, you know? You can't Nightclaw by Corviknight. All right, well, this is the last question, the most important question that maybe finally 63 episodes in will finally get correct. Who is going to win the Toronto Regional Championships? I think this is Sierra's last cooldown for, if you don't know, Len, we can't guess the same person for 3 events in a row. And so she had LAIC, and then there was like Sacramento, and then you can't say Ugarte for this one. We'll give you San Antonio, but you got to think of someone else for this one.
Well, I don't want to guess him for San Antonio. I want to guess him for this one.
It's tough.
Dude, like, one of you could potentially just, like, if you're superstitious and you believe in all of this stuff, but, like, last season, Joe got second, and then first. And then for NA events, the last 2, he's gotten second. So whether you want to take that as okay, well, he did go to Stuttgart and he got top 8, so that breaks that, or if you're just looking at NA events and you're like, oh, this could be the win, I don't know. But yeah, second, first was the trend last time. He's already had the seconds. So yeah. So I can't guess him, even though I'd want to. I'm gonna take a moment to think about who I am gonna guess, though. I'll let you guys go.
I'm ready with my pick. I'm gonna go with Aaron Traylor. I think.
Dude, I just looked at his name on the list and was like, this would be a really good pick, actually.
I'm glad I got in here.
Good call.
Because he got into Top Cut in Sacramento. I think was playing really well. Had a really strong like final push to get into Top Cut. Had to win a ton of rounds in a row. Then the Top Cut match did not go very well. I think it was a very difficult matchup, and he was not prepared for the mode that showed up, and obviously didn't look as competitive as he would have liked. But I think he's had even more time with that team and like made adjustments and been able to team build and been able to be more prepared for Toronto than he was in Sacramento. And yeah, always such a strong player. So yeah, I'm going with Aaron.
Poor Sierra. Can't choose Ugarte, can't choose Aaron Traylor.
Dude, well, like, I was just like, I don't know who I want to pick, so I'm going to look at the list of who's, like, attending. And then I open the list, I see Aaron's name, and I'm like, whoa, this is a great pick. And the second that thought goes through my mind, this is a great pick, I hear the words come out of Len's mouth. And I feel like this happens every single time on the podcast.
It does happen a lot. Sierra gets sniped.
I will just be like, I will let someone else go first, and this person... Crazy.
It does happen. Although I will say, Aaron, from Sierra's perspective, Aaron Traylor having a little bit of an alphabetical advantage here. I opened to see who's there, and I think Aaron Traylor.
No, because it was the list that TJ posted with Aaron Traylor, like 2/3 down the list. So there's just I don't know, man. I don't know.
The risk is if you sit here and let me answer first, I can also steal.
No, go for it. I'm gonna go pick another name, and I already I'm gonna highlight this on my screen. I already know who you're gonna say. Just say it. Just go.
I don't know if you're okay. I'm going with the New Yorker. I'm going with the repeat. Chuppa Cross the Fourth.
So predictable.
We're getting a Wolfie. We're getting a back-to-back Toronto back-to-back regional champion Chuppa Cross. Or Cuppa Cross the Fourth with the Sinister that was named Cuppa Cross. Did you know? Was that your guess?
I know. It's who I knew you were going to pick. I didn't want to go for the repeat, but I knew that's who you were going to pick.
I thought about picking Chuppa. That's a good pick.
I don't think I've ever picked Chuppa before. So
I didn't know I was deciding which one of you to steal the pick from, but I'm glad I got out there first.
Good call.
Oh my God.
I think it's a sound pick, you know?
Let me...
does that mean I'm rooting for Dondozo to win? Oh my God, what did I just do? What did I just do?
What do I want to say? You know, there's a lot of, like, European, a lot of people, like, out from overseas. True. So I am going to guess Maddie Morgan.
Wow.
Ooh, he's got a bajillion championship points right now.
Yes, second at a regional earlier this year, strong at the game. Traveling out, so that's who I'm gonna pick.
Picking the invasion across the Atlantic. All right,
bro.
Yeah.
Sierra was all in on EU at LAIC, and me.
And I was completely right, by the way.
Yeah,
literally in our preview show, they're like, "Who's going to be like the better team?" Yeah, even in the preview show, they're like, "What's your hot take?" And I'm like, "EU's gonna like completely blow NA out of the water. EU's just better right now." Like I said it in like better terms, but like I don't know. EU's just kind of been cooking, honestly.
Okay, like, except for Len. Len represented NA well. Maybe EU beat everyone else, but they didn't beat Len. Okay, he lost to a Latin American.
I have news for you. I have news for you. Len's casting this weekend, so
that means we're the real winners if you think about it.
So true. So true.
All right, that's our predictions. We'll see if we end up being right. I owe Sierra, or technically me and Marcos both owe Sierra and Jody an order of poutine this weekend from those LAIC predictions. I don't know if we're gonna buy you one and you split it in half, or like Marcos buys Jody's, I buy yours. All right, we'll figure out the logistics later on. But we're gonna move on, Len, to our final segment of the pod, and this is the question of the week. So for those who don't know, if this is your first time watching the podcast, at the end of every week, or at the end of every podcast, we have one of our Discord members ask us a question. Doesn't have to be Pokemon related, doesn't have to be VGC related, just a question you want to know from us, and we answer it. So if you ever have any burning questions that you'd like to ask us or any of our guests, make sure you join our Discord in the description down below. This week, listen, OHKO team, Fendi G's getting away with murder. I think this is like 3 weeks in a row Fendi G has asked the question of the week, so we can't let him get another one.
Is it a crime to be smart? Like, what?
No, it's a crime that everyone else is not living up to Fendi G's expectations. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So this is, we start with Len here. Fendi G asks, what was that magic spark that made you fall in love with being a caster?
Being a caster. I'm going to go way back. I wasn't even casting this match that I'm thinking of. I was just holding up a camera at the 2010 Worlds Finals because there was no way else to watch it online, and getting to have people watch the finals like through the internet. Suddenly it wasn't just the people in the room, but people all over could see this match and be with it there in the moment. And I was just holding the camera. I wasn't talking, we were just watching it on the screen. But I was like, this is really cool. This expansion of who gets to be part of the game is so cool, and I want to do more of it.
Okay. And then we can also answer, obviously, this question here, Sierra.
You want me to go first?
I can go first. I mean, I can't steal your perspective. I can't steal your answer here.
I know. Thank goodness for that, right?
All right, I'll go first then. I would say I've always wanted to be a broadcaster. Traditionally, it was in sports broadcasting as a kid. I've told the story before. Had some rough times in baseball. Remember, the coach told me to quit, and just like in the middle of a game.
I remember that story.
Yeah. So long story short, my baseball career ended when I was in middle school, and my mom had the good idea. She said, "Hey, well, Michael K, he gets to be a part of every Yankee game. He doesn't retire. He doesn't, he can be the broadcaster forever. So why don't you be a broadcaster instead of a player?" And I got into sports ever since. And then my spark in commentary for Pokemon was the 2015 World Championships. Obviously, I was Seijun pilled, being the first event I had watched, being Seijun win Worlds. But the moment being in the crowd in Boston and watching all those high skill chalk matchups and how high, and the Machampion moment and everything, I was in the crowd, and that was the moment I decided I was going to be a Pokemon caster.
I think for me, it's hard to determine that spark, because I was pretty fortunate with where things started off for me, because it wasn't really I had casted a grassroots in TCG, and I'd casted a regional in TCG way back, but the spark that I had more so instead of casting was just being involved in production. Well before I did any casting of any capacity, I ran 5 of the TCG regional streams in one of the years while they still had the grassroots. I made all the graphics myself. I ran the entire production. I used all of my equipment, and I was producing. There was even an event where the VGC stream died, So I have the VGC stream laptop on my lap while working on the TCG stream, like doing both at once to try and figure it out. So it was like, that's where I had this spark of like, I want to be involved in this, like this sort of broadcasting, like, and that's like my career goal at the end of like casting as well, is like my ideal situation is I get enough experience with this and like have enough value to this that when my casting career is done, Pokemon like looks at me and they're like, I guess we'll give you a job helping produce our shows. Like, I guess you kind of earned it well enough, right? Like 10 years down the line, that's the hope. But like, thought it was always just cool being able to like showcase, like the stories and that energy. And then when being asked to like hop behind the mic for it, it was cool having like your own words and being able to like show your passion for the game by being able to tell someone else's story. Like obviously they can't cast their own match. They're playing it, right? But being able to like tell their story for them and be trusted with that, I don't know. It was just always like a really cool part of the game. So, and like part of like casting. So yeah.
Now, Len, I'm very surprised that I like your answer, but it's your spark. You do what you want with it. I'm very surprised that your spark was not the click a fire move dude. You know what I'm talking about? The Groudon guy before Groudon was a fire type.
Oh,
so, you want to explain this video to our, because when you and Evan told me this, I think we were in Pittsburgh last year. I forget where we were. I was like crying. I was laughing so hard.
Well, before there were very many Pokemon streams, so we're not even talking like Pokemon running this great like high production quality thing we have now, and we're not even talking grassroots streams like Nugget Bridge and Critical Hit, like there with at least something going on. The best you'd get was like someone holding a phone looking at the TVs that were up in the venues, and so everyone would also gather around to watch those TVs. So you'd get a lot of idle commentary from the people who were watching. And there's one really memorable moment that was picked up like on the phone that was then sending this match on to everyone who was watching the internet, of someone just adamant that the Groudon needed to use a fire move. And of course, at the time, Groudon, pure ground type. It was only there to Earthquake and Rock Slide. It was never going to use a fire move, but just very adamant they needed to use Eruption and that it needed to use a fire type attack. And what was he doing? And you know what? We all laughed and thought this was so wrong. And then just a few short years later, they made Groudon a fire type. Every single one of them had a fire move. So at the end of the day, we were misinformed.
Pokemon heard them and they were like, oh, this guy's spitting.
Use a fire move. That's a good idea. We should. Oh man, some of those old stories are just so fun. It's just I was hoping that was your spark. That would have been a little nice, but I still respect it.
Just to give better information out to the world, and Groudon's gonna erupt any moment now.
You just you wait a couple generations, a couple consoles later, he's gonna click that fire move finally. I think I'll add just a quick wrinkle onto the question of the week. In addition to your spark, was there a VGC match in history that you could have been on the broadcast and like you didn't cast it, or you were just watching a spectator that you wish you were able to commentate? Like, could have been as a viewer, or like, let's say you worked a regional and you did top 4 match A, but top 4 match B was, oh man, I wish I casted that.
Something that come to mind are like friends winning tournaments, like are having really deep runs, getting to be there and be part of that with them would be really fun. And then there are just some like incredible moments of strategy. There's one from Worlds this summer that I tweeted about that was like an intentional KO into Spiky Shield in order to clear the field that I just thought was like the most clever little play. I would have loved to just be there and talking about it, but I think those are the kinds of things that come to mind.
Just a question for the class?
Yeah, for the class.
You're looking at me? All right, okay. I just didn't know if you just like wanted to hear more from Len.
I always want to hear your perspective, Sierra.
Oh, that's so nice. I need a moment to think. So
all right, I'll go next. I think to me,
I gotta think.
To me, because it doesn't have to be World Finals. Like I think, like saying, "Oh, I wish I cast Seijun." Like I don't think I would have done that match justice, especially at that point in my VGC career, in my commentary career. So I'm not gonna give that answer. I think to me, I really wish I could have cast the Machampion match. I think that is the most electric I've ever seen a crowd. I think Shady Penguin, like, I almost feel bad wanting to cast it because Shady did such an unreal job in that match, matching the energy of the audience and like having the skill swapping parental bond onto Cresselia, and like when he calls the lander a switch in and he ice beams it on the switch in, and like the Machamp like destroying Kangaskhan, like, oh my god, I wish I could have been in that caster booth casting the Machampion moment.
I think back, like, there is genuinely not one that like comes to mind right away. I don't know, like, I don't know. I actually genuinely don't think I could tell you, because like I feel like an easy answer is like when Ugarte like won Portland like for the second time, right? But it was also like really cool to not be casting that and to like be there and support and like be there in the crowd, right? And like there's a different type of energy, and like even stuff with like NAIC 23, I think it was, when Avery won in juniors, like I was out in the crowd. Like it's a different, like, you're not casting it, but at the same time you still get a very different experience, which I still really appreciated. That makes it kind of hard to answer this question. I'm not gonna lie, like I actually could not think of an answer to tell you.
Dude, if we had OHKO commentary for the do it again moment, if it was me and Sierra for Avery and Oranguru, we would have been so unhinged. Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
That would have been so good.
Like that would have been fun, but like sitting there like out in the crowd when it was all happening, like I wouldn't give that up. Like, you know, so
all right.
Like that.
Well, your answer is a non-answer. We still respect it nonetheless, because it was extra credit. It wasn't the original question of the week, so you can't get dinged for an extra credit. It's only additional.
Yeah, I'm not bowing out of this because I'm trying to be lame. I genuinely cannot tell you. Like, I'll probably sit about and think about this on like my whole way to Toronto to see if I can think of an answer. But like, I got nothing for you.
See, that's why they pay me the big bucks, Len. I'm asking the questions. I'm making the wheels churn, making the cogs, whatever the phrase is. I don't know. Making everybody think tough questions here on this podcast, Sierra. No answer. Cool. Audio listeners, she just did a little clap, but you couldn't even hear it because she didn't even clap hard enough. Anyway, thank you so much, Len, for joining us here on the OHKO podcast this week. It's been an absolute pleasure. Been so excited to have you on eventually, especially after your LAIC run. We wanted to talk to you about it. We're excited to see you this weekend in Toronto. Make sure we get ramen at least once, Sierra, because I do love ramen in Toronto. I've gotten it every single time. Always had very delicious ramen. But Len, where can our listeners find you out there on the social world?
Yeah, I guess both on X and Blue Sky as AlikaPKMN. You can find me.
All right.
Yeah,
cool.
Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. I'm looking forward to see you in Toronto in a few days.
All right. Thank you very much, Len. Been a great time. Thank you all for everybody made it to the end through the question of the week and everything. All our predictions. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. I forgot to say at the beginning because I'm really bad at this. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Hopefully that would be cool. Maybe next week I'll remember to actually say at the beginning to hit that subscribe button. If you're a Spotify only listener, take half a second to go over to YouTube and subscribe to the channel over there. But for now, we will see you all this weekend in Toronto. For the players, good luck. For the viewers, have fun, and we will see you next week.